Buongiorno, giocatori e giocatrici. I'm about to make you an offer you can't refuse. Yeah, you see, the next chapter in the Mafia series just released with The Old Country, taking you to Sicily at the turn of the 20th century. And you really should check it out if you're into Mafia and gangster movies or enjoyed the previous games, by which I mostly refer to the original versions of Mafia 1 and 2. You see, I adored the first Mafia game back then. This janky-ass game from the Czech Republic really nailed that Goodfellas or Godfather feeling in this unique approach to a GTA clone. Though, is it really fair to call it a GTA clone? It released 9 or so months after the revolutionary GTA 3. Had you drive and steal cars, go on missions, and featured a fully developed open city for you to explore and wreak havoc in. But it wasn't really designed as an open world game. Yeah, the city was there and there was some free roaming, but you mostly followed the linear story from chapter to chapter, one after the other, with not that much to do in the city. You often weren't even allowed to get too far away from a chapter's venue. Instead of giving you boundless freedom, the game was more about immersing you into a classic gangster story through a tight and well-written narrative without all too much filler. And the immersion was underscored by the almost simulation-like elements, where you had to adhere to traffic laws, actually listen to your passengers, and get familiar with the game world. The pace was unintuitively slow at times, for a game I mean, and the missions weirdly unspectacular, for a while at least. The game stood out for doing its own thing, and while not everything was perfect, far from it. It's well worth experiencing and it deserves all the praise it gets, even though it is mostly niche appeal, and the game gets a bit overshadowed by its own remake that went for a similar vibe but changed a lot of things. Polished it up, but lost quite a bit in translation. At its core, this is a classic Mafia tale, straight out of Martin Scorsese's book. It tells the story of a poor soul selling his humanity to climb the ranks in the syndicate and make it big, only to get disenchanted with the romanticized version of the mob and lose it all in the end. And this new game is no different in that regard. I mean, those are the best gangster stories. The complete loss might not be necessary, but there needs to be always some sacrifice. At the very least, the visible moral decay of the protagonist. So, The Old Country puts you into the shoes of Enzo Favara, a slave worker in a sulfur mine, who tries to flee from his master after a cave-in and gets rescued and taken in by the Torrisi crime family. This is where the game starts, and from here Enzo gets taken on missions and given little jobs. Mostly as a driver or muscle, and by that trained and raised into a bona fide mobster. He earns the trust of his fellow gangsters and of course Don Torrisi himself, and becomes a full-blown member of the family, at which point all the glory and all the romanticized image of the Mafia slowly vanishes, until the cold reality of the harsh gangster life hits. When honorable deals turn into bloodbaths, when loyalty turns into obedience, and when horrible deeds are just business. So yeah, the story has everything you could wish for in a Mafia game. The fictional Valle d'Orata, where the game takes place, is an intriguing place where a handful of crime syndicates fight, but mostly scheme, over control in the valley. And the events that occur and the things you have to do over the course of the game neatly fit into the setting. Though the final chapter turned the heat up a bit too fast for my liking. I'm not sure if I'd call it rushed, more so that certain moments felt a bit forced. And at least one character goes too much off the rails, just to provide some particular payoff, that could have been achieved otherwise, while letting said character act more consistently with all we knew about them before. And while this did weaken the conclusion of the story for me a bit, for most of its runtime, the plot is engaging and smart, with just a handful of unfortunate lines of dialogue here and there. The characters are also really well written and well acted. They are full of personality, even though for most of them it's pretty subdued, since they are, you know, classic gangsters with quite a bit of life experience. But there are of course also the younger syndicate members, trying to make a name for themselves, who can be quite loud and boisterous. I'm not gonna go into too much detail now, since the characters are a major component of the narrative and that one's kinda the main attraction in this game, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but I will give a somewhat brief overview. Enzo himself is fine enough as a protagonist. He kinda is the gangster with a heart of gold, a kind soul forced into a life of crime and violence. He kills mostly to protect others, and when he feels that he crossed the line, he wants to get out of the syndicate. He never boasts about his crimes, but he is loyal to the Don and his other superiors. And he also has dreams of a brighter future, he honors his dead friend's memory, and he has a thing for the Don's daughter, which gives him the strength and hope to continue his work within the syndicate. He isn't anything special, he's not an outstanding character by any means, especially not in this cast, but he's a safe protagonist. Nothing he does is too offensive, and all in all, he's very believable. Enzo's love interest Isabella inherited her father's strong will, and maybe his hard head. She knows what she wants and is not afraid to take the initiative, without being blind to her place in this world. She lives in a golden cage and knows it. And while she'd prefer a different, a freer life, she makes the best of her situation and takes pleasure in the small ways she foils her father's attempts to control her. Though she is rather naive to the gruesome things happening around her and seems to not really understand why Enzo doesn't openly defy her father. Or maybe she is just really sheltered and Don Torrisi does a great job keeping her away from the business. Cesare is the Don's nephew, which he isn't shy to mention all the damn time. He likes to live fast and loud, he flaunts his status, he's a womanizer, he doesn't always take his duties seriously, and over time, he becomes Enzo's best friend. He can still be, and often is, an insufferable prick, even towards Enzo, but it's depicted in a relatable way. That is how friends act towards each other. And seeing how he reacts to the events unfolding around him is really satisfying. I got more out of his conclusion than that of Enzo's. One of my favorites is Luca Trapani, the father of Sam from the first Mafia game. A well-mannered and collected man, always with a friendly demeanor while he enforces the Don's orders. He knows his place within the syndicate's hierarchy and readily follows but also gives out orders. And he's not above a bit of friendly banter with his subordinates. He is loyal to a T, but maybe not all too happy with his life choices. Tino Russo is the Don's consigliere, as ruthless as he is merciless, and as one of the few true Sicilians, both in terms of birthplace as well as way of life, he looks down on most of the young whippersnappers in the Don's syndicate. He enjoys his position next to the most powerful man of the family and would gladly murder and torture anyone who threatens the Don's position, or his own. Maybe the most frightening man in the story. And then there's Don Torrisi himself, the head of the Torrisi crime family. He is well respected throughout Valle Dorata. He is always calm, even in the face of betrayal, even in front of someone he despises. Well, almost always. His presence is always authoritative and awe-inspiring. He never asks, he always demands. And he goes hard on the Marlon Brando voice. The later Marlon Brando voice.
You did right by this family. I'm proud of what you've become.
Something I really like about his design is that despite his elegant clothes, he is built like some strong man, one of the few characters in the game having such a build. He could be a butcher as a front and no one would doubt him. Like, it's not only his sinister charm with which he controls people, it's also his stature emanating an almost explicit threat of violence. Now, I do take my sweet time here with the characters and the setup and all that, maybe even too much. I will come to the gameplay, but honestly, nothing there really stands out. It's more how it all comes together in service of the presentation. That's the most important thing to me with this game, what stayed the most with me. It's the atmosphere, the vibe of it all, the believable world and the relatable characters that have been entertainingly well realized. The atmosphere is thick in this game, completely different from most other gangster media, since this doesn't take place in the 20s or 30s America, but in the Sicily countryside even before the First World War. No Tommy guns and drive-by shootings in here. Half of the time you don't even travel by car, but on horseback. But yeah, you do travel a lot. The vast open landscape of the Valle Dorata is yours. Mostly. The same as with the original Mafia, it is not actually an open world game. It just takes place in an open world. But most of the time the game strictly prohibits straying too far from the set path. All too often you get punished for walking a few steps in the wrong direction. Yeah, you see, you even get explicit permission to take a look around at the fair, but be sure to only take a look around near the objective marker. Want to explore the property of the Dawn, since the vineyard is really inviting? Tough luck, you're gonna go straight to the house. Want to explore some houses near the road, since you're already driving all the way across the valley to find collectibles, like charms to strengthen some of your abilities, or these weird fox statues, of which there are 50 or so in the game. I found 4. But no, go straight to the next objective and don't you dare take a wrong turn. And for the most part, it's fine. Why should you be able to freely explore? Most of the time, when you're out and about, you're on a job. Or on your way to a job. So why would you waste any time? Any of the Dawn's time, that is. Sure, a free roam mode might be kind of fun, but with the way the story and the game's progression is structured, limitlessly exploring the valley would just distract from what the game is trying to accomplish. It was nice driving through the valley, familiarizing myself with the place during the mission, but I had no real urge to goof around in the open world. I'd rather wanted to get to the next piece of the story. Though, since there are collectibles, and I believe some of them are in the open world, though at least the gameplay affecting ones are all found along the critical path, but other collectibles are in random houses or villages, and since you can never be sure whether or not you're allowed to explore, it kinda disincentivizes from going out of your way to find these collectibles. I guess this could have been better communicated. Maybe just by Luca or Cesare telling Enzo to come see them later when he's free. Maybe even advising him to familiarize himself with the place and the people living there, so that you know that now's the time for some free roaming. Another aspect, maybe criticism, I have with the purposefully underutilized open world stems from the characters you get to meet. I already mentioned that I find them overall pretty damn well written. Thought went into all of them, even the ones that only have a handful of lines. They have a personality, you just don't see much of it. And well, not seeing much of them is kinda the problem. The closer the game gets to the finale and the resolution of the story, the higher the stakes rise. Betrayals get uncovered, and many side characters meet their end in one way or another. Some get murdered by the Torrisi family's enemies, some get killed by the Torrisi family themselves for betraying the Dawn. And then Enzo or Cesare or whoever is close by to talk to is upset. How could, Luigi do something like that? He was like a brother to me. And again, even the side characters are well realized, but you don't see enough of them. Half of the people getting killed during the final chapters, well, I didn't even know who they were. I wasn't sad about their death, I wasn't shocked about their treachery. The story takes place over the course of 3 or so years, so Enzo had a lot of time to get to know these people, but we only have 10 or so hours, in which we also spend a lot of time shooting mobsters from behind waist-high cover and drive around the countryside. Now, a handful of side missions, not too many, in between the story missions, might have helped with that. Just have us revisit the car mechanic a handful of times, maybe to get some parts for him or take one of his cars out for a test drive or something. Help the factory owner deal with another workers' strike, maybe go on another collection run after the initial story one. Anything to help you get to know these people better. Maybe the game could even reflect how close Enzo has grown to these people by having alternate or throwaway lines during the finale. When they lament how Luigi betrayed them, he could either say he never knew too much about the guy but he appeared fishy, or he joins in and cries about this foul deception. The scenes and moments in question are all well done, none at less. The characters are still well written. I just have too little of a connection to them. With the major ones, the tragedies hit hard, because the devs know their stuff, so I'm sure just a bit more time with the minor characters would have helped immensely. But okay, since I already went into the gameplay a bit, let's talk about it a bit more. I mean, that is the meat of the game. It's what ties the story segments together. The best story can be ruined by bad or even worse, tedious gameplay. So it's a good thing that the gameplay in this one is fine. The game doesn't revolutionize the action genre, it doesn't even particularly refine it. It just decently incorporates a number of established mechanics and never offensively fails at any of them. Not like the fucking race in the original Mafia. Well, this game also has a race. 2 in fact. One by horse and one by car. They are fine. They're also a bit janky, but not nearly as much as the one in Mafia 1. Though I believe only the horse race is an actual race, while the car one has some trickery going on behind the scenes. It's possible to lose the mission if another contestant crosses the finish line before you, but it seems other drivers wait for you at certain points in the race, having their own little set piece during the race, so to speak. Which is good, since the car handling, especially at high speeds, is not always the, let's say, easiest. Which also is nothing new for the Mafia series, since you mostly play old, bulky cars without modern conveniences. At least if you don't activate them in the options menu. But yeah, I wouldn't call it a driving simulation, but it's also not full-on arcade, like most action games with cars in it. It's somewhere in the middle, depending on your settings, a bit more or less further to the arcade side. Driving around feels good, and due to the somewhat clumsy and by that more involved handling, it raises the tension during chases and the like. And to be clear, I don't think the design is clumsy, but the driving itself, since the cars are bulky and prehistoric. That said, there are a few imperfections, not outright jank, but certain noticeable issues. Things the internet already lost their shit over, needlessly. Some animation problems and the like that look goofy at times but haven't ruined any scenes for me. Some animations are overly simple, like maybe it's just me, but when turning around on horseback it looks a bit like you and the horse are floating over the ground and effortlessly spin around. Certainly to make it control smoother, it just looks a bit weird. And so do the passengers of a car. They're just awkwardly static while the car slams into walls and fences and shakes back and forth on those bumpy dirt roads. But let's be fair here. Most of the game looks beautiful. The art design is really strong. Cutscenes are well framed and well animated. All the little idle animations give the NPCs more life, and stuff like weather or lighting really gives the game a certain mood that really immerses you. It might not be an outstanding graphical showcase, but it's still a fine looking game, and the art design compensates for whatever might be lacking in terms of graphical prowess. The performance though is a problem. I've heard it's pretty bad on PC, and on PS5 I had a lot of stuttering and frame rate dips. Unreal Engine 5 is mostly blamed for these issues, or more likely, the inexperience of the devs or maybe wrong priorities in dealing with an inefficient engine. Wu Chang had similar issues, and so did the Oblivion something, and so did Black Myth Wukong last year. But I feel, of these examples, this game runs the worst on console. There's also some collision issues, and the sticky cover that the game uses arbitrarily decides whether it's really sticky and doesn't let go of you or isn't sticky at all. And also the swap or orbit cover option or picking up objects from cover randomly just doesn't work. Like the prompt doesn't appear, which isn't anything game breaking, but it's pretty annoying when it happens. As for the core gameplay, when we're not walking around, talking to people or exploring or just enjoying the sights, we're either traveling somewhere on horse or by car, or dealing with enemies by either sneaking past them or mercilessly murdering them. I already mentioned the driving. It's fine, you won't do anything crazy, at least as long as you're not going out of your way to make it crazy. And the devs put in the work to make the cars feel satisfyingly old-timey, not always necessarily fun to use, but fitting for the setting. The horse riding is decent. It accomplishes what it sets out to do, but it doesn't do anything exceptional or noteworthy. I would call it a straight up copy from the horse riding in Ocarina of Time, but that one was actually more refined. The horse reacted more naturally to your commands, and there was even some skill involved in some maneuvers. There is no skill involved in any of the horseback segments in this game. It's either challenge-less story segments or very streamlined action segments where you're on rails for all intents and purposes and would need to put some real effort into your fuck-ups for you to not be able to recover from them. During these sections, you're often also able to shoot your gun, but you don't actually have to aim at your enemies. I guess the devs thought it would be too hard or too distracting to steer and aim at the same time, which might be true, but, well, so is aiming a gun from horseback or while driving a car. But yeah, you only have to point your crosshair at the general direction of an enemy and the aim assist takes over. And then you pretty much just mash the gun button, since you have unlimited ammo in those moments. It's a bit mindless, though I'm not sure how else these scenes could be done without reworking and changing them completely. A bit more involved are the ground battles. These either come in the form of shootouts or stealth sections for the most part. Sneaking is a straightforward affair. Press the crouch button to, well, crouch, which doesn't make you invisible like in many RPGs, but it makes you short enough to have the waist-high walls break line of sight, if you're standing still. Moving around, even behind cover, can have enemies detect you, which is some nice attention to detail and can make the stealth really challenging and rewarding. If it weren't for the fact that sticking to cover does make you completely invisible. When you're in an enemy's line of sight, it takes a few seconds until they get suspicious and investigate, and another second or so for them to raise the alarm and attack you. To not break stealth, you can either try to carefully slip past every enemy, which is possible, so that's neat, or dispose of your enemies silently. As in pretty much every other recent-ish stealth game, you just have to approach an enemy without getting noticed and press a button to kill them. One way is to strangle them to death, which involves some button mashing while a timer ticks down. The enemy slumps to the ground and you can loot him for ammo, healing items and money and carry him away to where he won't be found. Not that I had too many problems with enemies spotting corpses. I believe it only happened once and I was immediately able to capitalize on it. Enemy patrols often don't lead past each other, each of them has their own little space they guard. Often they're even placed in a way where they can't see each other, so disposing of them is easy as pie. And if you can't find a safe route past an enemy, you can always distract him by throwing one of the many bottles lying around in each arena or a coin from your inventory that you can replenish by looting downed enemies. If you even have to do this, because these sections are so highly scripted that guards often move away from their post as soon as you get close or get distracted and turn around so you can sneak past them. Another way to silently kill enemies is with your knife. It's faster than strangling them, but it blunts the blade, and when the knife's sharpness has been depleted, you can't use it for a stealth kill anymore. Good thing there are whetstones lying around everywhere, or can be looted from fallen enemies to restore your knife's sharpness completely. You can also use the knife to pick locks on strongboxes and doors, to find more resources and collectibles, or easier routes through a level. But this also decreases the sharpness. If you fail to stay hidden, most of the time the gameplay transitions into shootout mode. Only a handful of scenes have mandatory stealth, so this is pretty nice. I generally prefer when stealth is optional and getting spotted results in enemies ganging up on you, with you still having a chance to make it through. Alarms are always global, so if one enemy in a far out corner spots you, the whole level is soon upon you. Now, the shootouts are straightforward as well. The game is a cover shooter. You can hunker down behind waist-high walls or press against the wall and peek around a corner. And as long as you stick to cover, the enemies on the other side can't hit you. But they quickly respond to you sticking your head out of cover to take aim, and they're fairly accurate with their shots. So it's not just a matter of shooting from behind cover, you still have to wait for an opening in the enemy's onslaught. They also like to flush you out with grenades. Though jumping from cover to cover is a pretty safe way to cross the battlefield. And while the enemy's bullets can quickly shred through your health, you don't die so easily and can always make a comeback. A small portion of your health replenishes after a while when you're in the red, and you can also find bandages lying around or loot them from enemies. So as long as you're not running around the battlefield like a headless chicken, you should be fine. Combat arenas are often pretty open with many different entry points, so if you're not careful, you can get surrounded pretty quickly, but here again, the overall difficulty just isn't all that high. And maybe I'm wrong on this, but it feels like the game has some systems in place to give you an edge whenever you're close to die. Pretty much every time I looted an enemy without bandages in my inventory, I got some. Whenever I got close to die, bullets seemed to hurt less. During chases, enemies seemed to wait for me to catch up. Maybe there is some adaptive difficulty going on. Many of the battles are punctuated with a kind of boss fight that's always a knife duel, and where the game changes into a kind of punch-out clone, where you need to respond to your opponent's attacks with the correct reactions and wail on them whenever you see an opening. The knife fights fit the mafioso theme, but this, along with some other elements, well, the game feels quite gamey in a lot of places. During cutscenes, during exploration and all that, it takes itself very seriously, it goes for a cinematic feeling, it's very atmospheric, but when the actual gameplay, or maybe let's call it the action gameplay starts, this all gets thrown out for some video game shenanigans. Like, you're always sent in alone, or maybe with one companion to fight a small army. Where is your backup? Why doesn't your family overwhelm the enemy with sheer numbers? Why aren't there 20 foot soldiers with you, riddling the enemies with bullets? They always come at you in full force, and every low-level goon has a bunch of bodyguards. But Enzo is always on his own and racks up a body count Michael Corleone or Scarface could only dream of. And when we come to the knife fights, it's a bit silly how every important or major enemy or leader of a group is fought in honorable melee. Even if your goal is to assassinate them, even if they don't deserve your respect, even if there aren't any onlookers, you always agree to duel. Would have been nice, at least once, to shoot a guy who thinks it's a smart idea to pull a knife on me after I've slaughtered his whole gang. And pretty often during these knife fights, the game commits the cardinal sin of having you attempt a QTE button mash prompt, and even if you win, the enemy overwhelms you. And too often for my liking, the game goes even further and does the thing where you win the fight, but in the cutscene afterwards you are nearly beaten with the enemy completely fine, taunting you, maybe even going for the kill, but get stopped or distracted by someone else. I hate this. I won. Don't pretend otherwise. So, how is the game on a whole? Well, I have mixed feelings. I liked the game, I enjoyed playing it, I really loved the atmosphere, created by a tight narrative with intriguing characters, some really good voice performance, a unique setting with a lot of attention to detail, and man, that soundtrack. It has this classic gangster vibe, but, or maybe because of that, it is a slow burner, pretty much all the way to the end. The pacing is slow, even though the journey takes 3 years, which can sometimes feel a bit jarring. Though, I personally liked it. That is, until the final chapter, where even for me too many things happened too suddenly and some character motivations changed too drastically. The core gameplay is a bit repetitive and the mission setups, at least when the action part begins, aren't varied enough to break up that repetitiveness. Though the set pieces are really enjoyable and the game plays around with different environments as much as is possible, given that it all plays in this one valley. But you get the rocky hills with their caves and winding paths connecting to each other, giving many opportunities for ambushes, a police station with many separated rooms and closed doors providing extra cover, a small village that provides a less artificial and symmetrical layout, or a factory where enemies fight you on different elevations, among a few others. So there is some variety, but it's mostly just in the look and feeling of a combat arena, not all that much in the gameplay itself. It never got boring or annoying, but it should still be noted. Still, I had a blast playing through this game, but it's not something I need to go back to immediately, and I didn't have the urge to find all the collectibles or experiment all that much with the different weapons or charms that give bonuses to all kinds of things. I would not have missed that stuff if it wasn't there. Which isn't really a problem, since it's not that intrusive. I was here for an engaging Mafia tale, and that's what I got. And for the most part, like almost all of it, I'm pretty happy with what I got. It's definitely worth playing if you are into gangster stories. But yeah, with that, I'm off. Arrivederci, I wish you the greatest of days, this has been Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.